Hi, I'm Ira Winkler.
And I'm Araceli Troy Gomez, and welcome to the initial edition of the IRARI Report, brought to you in partnership with CSO Magazine.
I also want to thank our other sponsors, which include Norse Corporation. And Norse is the leader in helping companies block the threats other systems miss. Norse's technology has grids of millions of sensors, honeypots, and crawlers that are unmatched with visibility into difficult to penetrate geographies, even darknets. Visit them at norsecorp.com. We also want to thank SecureMentum. SecureMentum is your one-stop shop for all your needs in security awareness. They take years off the implementation of comprehensive awareness programs. They create the most effective awareness programs, coordinating phishing, computer-based training, collateral, and unique events. Visit SecureMentum at securementum.com. Let's talk a little bit about the name, because a lot of people are like, what's IRARI?
So my name's Araceli, which is a bit of a mouthful. So I tend to go by Ari, which is A-R-I, and this is Ira, who goes by Ira, I-R-A. We have the not-so-unique distinction in common of talking a little bit too fast. So unfortunately, as we introduce ourselves in tandem, IRARI is generally what comes out and is all that gets heard by our audience anyway.
And here's the thing. Right now, the IRARI report kind of sounds cool. We're also tending to security ADD, so we got both of the domain names, and we're pretty much juggling which one is which. Because to be upfront with you, this is our first edition. We don't know how we're going to go first. We were debating whether or not to talk about security-related events, before every show. We were debating whether or not to move on to other things or stick with the interview. Because frankly, some people might want to hear us babble. I don't know if we want to hear us babble. So with that in mind, what we're going to do today is we're going to skip all that. Well, I guess we haven't skipped all that because we just all did that. And we're going to go into the interview with Jeff Barden. And we'll let Jeff talk about himself. But Jeff is a world-renowned expert in knowing what terrorists are doing on the internet, on social media, and the like. And he's going to give us a report today on how ISIS is able to get people to do some incredibly stupid things and leave their home and family and basically go to kill themselves in the Middle East. So anyway, we're going to start with Jeff now. Let me introduce you to Jeff Barden. Jeff Barden is CTO of Treadstone 71, and I think I got that correct. Jeff will correct me if I'm wrong about the CTO title. And additionally, he is, like I said, one of the world's experts in how terrorists behave on the internet. He's a world expert in a variety of different issues concerning the Arab world and how their interactions are and things to that effect. And like we mentioned, he's here to tell us about ISIS today primarily, and we'll find out a little bit more about that. So anyway, Jeff, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. And CTO isn't correct, but that's okay.
Okay.
It's actually it changes frequently. Because when you're in a small company, you can call yourself anything you'd like. So,
okay. Well,
so it's CTO is I do CTO work. I do CIO work. Chief Cook Bottle Washer is probably a good title for that. Yeah.
So is there anything
that works?
Is there anything else besides Chief Cook and Bottle Washer you want people to know that you do to kind of introduce yourself much better than I ever could?
Well, I've been doing this for a long time, actually. Probably about 2004, I got started in the infiltrating online jihadist sites, kind of before it was fashionable, before people were really out there actively engaging them. Established methods for building cyber personas, or sock puppets as we call them. Use my background in Middle East studies, Arabic language, and having been a linguist in the Air Force to leverage that. It started mostly when I saw the beheadings online, and I felt I had to do something. So infiltrating these sites back then was much easier. Today, it's actually a polluted area today, with everybody and their grandmother out there trying to infiltrate and penetrate these sites to the point where the site itself might even be a false site, along with everyone in it thinking it is not. So started collecting back then and continued on with this. Provided a lot of data for free for a few years to federal agencies, lots of times providing them information before it was actually out on the internet, just by virtue of penetrating these sites. So that's kind of on that side of the house. Been a CISO for a number of years. So the combination of the security side with the linguistic skills and the Middle Eastern background have been kind of unique in a convergence of that. It wasn't planned. like to say it was, but it was something that just had to happen. So today, we still infiltrate the sites. We do a lot of passive intelligence collection, and we'll then follow very structured analytic techniques and analytic writing methods to communicate that to different customers we have out there in the marketplace. So it's a pretty unique small business. We move fast. We stay within our skill sets. We don't necessarily look at the technical side as much as we do more clandestine cyber human intelligence collection, and have been doing that now going on 11, 12 years.
So, Jeff, in a nutshell, you've just hit on something that's very near and dear to my heart, which is the human asset classification of the intelligence stream. Are you able to talk about that at a high level, about how that's different from the technical intelligence components a lot of us are hearing about in the industry now, and how you differentiate them?
Absolutely. Most of the time in a security environment or CIO, CISO suite, they look at the technical aspects, the tactics, techniques, and protocols relative to the malware or the technology that's hitting them, sometimes even the adversary themselves. When it comes to the human aspect, you have to take into account social cultural aspects, religious, linguistic aspects of these folks. You need to know them in depth. You need to actually live as much online as them as they do themselves. So it's almost a complete immersion into this practice, because when you're in these sites and you're communicating, one word or two words slip up can actually mean the end of your sock puppet. You can be discredited quickly and removed from the site. So we follow some very strict procedures in building our sock puppets. We actually build storylines and storyboards around them before we actually release them. And we actually have a method that eventually we can track not only credibility, reliability of our sources, but we're trying to build a method. We've got, I think, some IP around it to actually track the heartbeat of our personas.
And how are companies making use of that? Are they doing that because I know you started doing this more as a passion project?
That's correct. And it's actually a good idea before its time is not. So this has not been a good idea for a while until finally people are finding that the technical side just isn't enough. It's not even half the equation. It's just a part of it. So what we're finding is that more and more people are actually wanting to learn about very structured analytic techniques, wanting to learn about how to build and manage personas, how to understand the whole package so they can put together a full view of who's attacking them. Some of the things too on the human side they're finding is that the technical side is basically an after the fact effort for the most part. It's a see, detect, and arrest methodology. The cyber intelligence side gives you a lot of proactive and up to date information. It's basic information, it's research information, but you can translate that into means and methods, methods of denial and deception of your from your adversaries before it comes to your doorstep. So it's pretty effective to have that knowledge ahead of time, and more people are starting and wanting to learn about these types of methods. That's what's been keeping me busy of late, filling up the training classes and leading to establishing cyber intelligence build-out programs for all the way down from strategic plans to programs to standard operating procedures around collection and analysis.
Let me ask you one question. Okay, so how does ISIS go from being what they are to on social networks to recruiting people? Because I know you went through detail in, breaking down the ISIS recruiting document. Can you start describing that? And, that is fascinating how they could get people to do incredibly stupid things. So how does it start? How do they because I'm assuming there's a funnel of some sort where they find potentially vulnerable people. They figure out who's potentially ripe for recruitment and following up. So could you describe that, please?
That's all right. So the recruitment side starts with, and lots of times, non-religious Muslims and looking for guidance and direction. And most of the time, it's youth, and they're lost. They find a lot of things online that have been negative about Arabs, about Muslims. I mean, let me ask you this question: when was the last time you saw a movie or a TV show that was actually positive about Muslims or Arabs? I don't know if you've ever seen one. So they're constantly hit with a negative stereotype about them, and so they look for direction. Many of them have come to Western countries, and they've fallen away from the religion. They have been tied into more materialism of capitalism side of the house, and they just are looking for something to grab onto, like all youth in most cases. So they're exposed to Islam in such a way that it's not your traditional Islam. It is more the extremist, the Salafi type of Islam. And these people will prey on the youth and those types of people. So they may be looking to fill holes in their lives. They may also be soft-hearted as they're starting to return to a practice of Islam. They've seen their parents move away from it, or they've been part of a movement that they believe is deviant from the Salafi view of Islam. Now, that Salafi view of Islam is Islam as it was during the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they want to make sure that uh, they follow this structured approach, and they're tired of these deviant, different groups. The other thing too is that the establishment of the caliphate in Iraq and Syria offers them a centralized organization that in the past, whether it was Al Qaeda or through Bin Laden and company, dispersed all over the world. There was no centralized focus. So the establishment of the caliphate has given them a centralized focus. What you find is they try not to target most of the time youth from cities. They will actually look at foundation members, possibly from the Muslim Brotherhood. And there's a Tablighi Jamiat, which is a group of about possibly 80 million Muslims from around 165 nations. And they kind of prefer a word of mouth method of education, training, and knowledge around this. And it kind of runs underneath the scope. And if you were to search on that term, if I had to spell it for you, you could search on it, you would find it's actually been identified as a source. They'll look at colleges and university students, because that's a time when they're away from parents for 4 to 6 years. They're full of zeal and most of the time anti-government type of sentiments. They'll look at high school students and start to cultivate the idea of jihad within them. These kids, maybe down 15 years old, they believe are pure minds and minds that can be molded. Just like any military organization likes to get an 18-year-old and grab them early and mold them into blind obedience, the same types of ideas come in play with respect to their recruitment and radicalization activities. They don't go after Muslim scholars most of the time because Muslim scholars, in many cases, are already targeted by different intelligence or security groups around the world, so they try not to target them. They also have a list of not targeting who they believe are cowardly people, excessively talkative people, people who may be against the idea of Mujahid Islam, stingy people because they want money. Money is the backbone of jihad, so they don't want stingy people. They actually come right out and say that. And they stay away from the loner because they want people who can actually socialize and have some leadership skills to actually recruit others. So they have a definite model of who they try and stay away from. There's also a series or stages of recruitment. And throughout these stages, this is where they start surveying and scoring their students as they go. So stages of recruitment starts with just getting acquainted and choosing their targets. They look at their basic morals and manners, Islamic morals relative to that. Are they committed to worship and prayer? Do they have possible leadership skills? Are they close to these people physically? It's not all online. It's not all cyber or actually anything online. Online does help with that, but also physical proximity is another key function that keeps your communications operationally secure. They start to get close to these folks. They approach them. They want to know their daily work routines, weekly routines. They may approach them at the colleges or universities, or if they're going to mosque, or if they're going to make prayer together, make dua together. They may contact them via SMS, text, and email, or via some sort of social networking communication. They might even visit them at home. And this communication starts to pick up over time as they basically are co-opting them into the program. Take them to dinner, take them out to lunch. They want to know everything about their concerns, their interests, their relationships, how they spend their every waking hour. And then they start to score them. So the scoring is 1 point for a no, 2 points for a sometimes, and 3 points for a maybe, based on a series of survey questions that the recruiter asks himself about the candidate or candidates. Anything less than a 10 is a no-go. 10 to 18 is move ahead, but with caution. and a 19 and above is success. You can move on, and it looks pretty strong candidate. So they rank them, and they actually try and track them going forward. Now, this is they every step of the way they actually will rank and score them. So at the end, they've got an aggregate score. Not all of them do this, mind you, but this is the methodology that has been dictated in this document that they should follow. So it's a guideline for them to use. They have what's called the awakening of Iman, or their awakening towards Islam and their transformation to Islam. And they want to make sure that these folks have good morals and manners towards Islam, and they focus on the teachings of the desire for paradise. It starts to come into play, and the push towards jihad. They will score them again, and they'll look at some of the attributes on their love for Allah, their yearning for the delights and pleasures of paradise, their love of the messenger, again, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, obligatory prayers and dua, avoid disobedience to Allah, trust, sincerity, virtues of jihad and martyrdom. Then they also are taught this is going to take them through different trials. So the trials that they go through are seen as methods to prove their sincerity towards this effort. They're supposed to have patience as they go through these trials. And increasing righteous action, as they perform righteous action, they're supposed to do more frequently, more in depth. And that righteous action is towards the Salafi view of Islam as they start to adapt and adopt the correct character of what they're looking for. They also direct them online to different audio, video, media indoctrination. There's plenty of sites that are still online today, and I'll provide you those URLs, some of them. They have education about the great sheikhs, from al-Baghdadi frequently to bin Laden and Zawahiri and even Zarqawi in their view. And there are plenty of other very honored and religiously validated sheikhs out there. They personify the issue of Palestine greatly to make sure that that is a main issue in the education. And they make sure also that they don't align to any one of those particular sheikhs, but they need to know their jihadi personalities across the board. Again, they'll score them in this area, and if they have the proper scoring, they move on again, or move on with caution, or it's a no-go.
Could I interrupt you for a quick question? So now all of this is so it's going on online. Where online is this? Is this Twitter? Is this Facebook? Is this like they get groups and see if people gravitate towards groups? Because you said it does happen in person sometimes, but when we're talking internet-related activities and social media, where is the contacts?
And polluted right now. So, and you start to get into Facebook, but Facebook is well polluted, and and it's hard to do it there. Twitter, the Facebook, the YouTubes, the LinkedIn sites, which I don't use too much, but you can still identify. I still find Facebook is heavily used, but the actual recruitment, and many times, is done possibly through secure communications, encrypted emails, VPNs, or even down in the deep, in the dark web, where they're holding some of these communications. But they don't take them down there until they've proven a trust level. And many times that trust level doesn't come to play until you have that face-to-face meeting. You're going to find that a lot of the education comes online with respect to audio and video, the recruitment, the incitements, the YouTube activities, and the way they're actually creating those videos and messages towards a younger crowd. They're appealing to them with kind of an MTV view of join the Salafi revolution and join ISIS. So they're appealing to them online that way, but many of the contacts will also take place face to face. You see these people coming from, say, Minnesota, who might be part of a Somali group, and they are actually getting it online in combination with face-to-face activities. So they will find somebody by posting a desire to participate, but that will also attract law enforcement. So they have to be very careful. As you've seen recently, a gentleman posted how exciting it was and heady to be on the verge of committing jihad or martyrdom. And as soon as he posted that, these keywords are being monitored and tracked. So when you do that type of things and those types of things in the clear nowadays, it's going to attract unwanted attention. So I'm seeing more of the online view is for incitement, excitement, education, viewing the MP3s and the videos about the sheikhs and the genre, being able to download information, such as there's a document called the Global Islamic Resistance Call from Abu Musab Asuri. He was actually released from prison in Syria a couple of years back, and now I'm not sure where he is. But his book on the Global Islamic Resistance Call is basically their companion. It gives them a how-to go about executing jihad. And so they read books, they request knowledge, they request more about it. They want to actually participate in jihad as they've gone through this. But I'm not seeing Ari, the real hardcore stuff out in the open. You may catch a few foolish people, but a lot of people are getting in, and those are the ones you don't hear about. And those communications come in play down in the dark web through encrypted communications and a lot of face-to-face activities.
So you're starting to touch on something that I'm kind of wondering about, and I appreciate that. I think as a security community are very well conditioned, though we know the truth does not actually support this, to expect that there are some sort of bells and whistles associated with failure. And this is one of these conditions where we're seeing a lot of silent successes. Do you have any theories as to why it is that when there's been a breakdown in the recruitment process or a complete failure or a missed target acquisition, that doesn't become more newsworthy or doesn't tip the scales more often? That it takes that kind of very isolated singular fellow who, makes a Twitter statement that he shouldn't have, that starts to blow things open. Why do we not see more missed
I don't know
target
if it
acquisition?
actually. I'm not sure really if that much target acquisition is actually occurring. I think law enforcement would want to uh, actually step that up. On the other hand, sometimes that will actually tip your hand. This is your traditional push and pull between intelligence and law enforcement. So I look at law enforcement will want to see, detect, and arrest and talk about their arrest and document this. Intelligence may try and turn somebody. They may try and infiltrate the group through those people and not actually communicate to the public that they have actually found someone, turned them. So this is a constant push pull back and forth. Law enforcement has to show results that the public gets to see. Intelligence is always behind the scenes and doesn't necessarily come to the forefront. So I think that is part of what we're seeing there. Is intelligence probably has a lot more successes than the law enforcement side.
So anyway, the last time, so you were talking about their grooming, you were talking about that. So then I'm assuming, based upon what we were saying, that after you get to the grooming point of this, they start to go ahead and then encourage them to either act on their own, like the women recently in the United States that were planning to blow things up, or come out to Syria and be with a caliph. Is that what happens after they've done this grooming? Like, how do you get somebody okay, you've groomed them, now come out here and do something stupid, or basically, in the case of one woman, say, screw
Well,
your
I think
family,
it comes
go
down
blow
in the
something up.
recruitment process. They'll start to make the call of what that person's best can best serve the cause. So as they go through the recruitment, they'll start to analyze where these people would serve best. Are they best to be a lone wolf and execute an attack and commit physical terrorist attacks that actually will cause, possibly if they're successful, cause a great deal of public outrage and harm? Or try to make it through now the gauntlet of getting into Syria or Iraq, which is becoming tougher and tougher. So I think they make these determinations and these calls through the recruitment process. And of course, we may see them as stupid acts, but for the most part, they see them again as committing a righteous, executing a righteous act and following through as they've been indoctrinated in the process. They've read the documents, they've listened to the sermons, and if you listen to these sermons long enough, that's one of the things that many times I have to go back and listen to get the mindset right. You have to listen to these sermons. You have to get into the mindset. You have to know what, say, Anwar al-Awlaki has said and what other sheikhs have said. You can start to get an idea of what these people are capable of and what they might do. Now, the ones that actually come out and communicate this foolishly online, they probably made a mistake in their recruitment. Those are the ones that are the talkative ones, right? That you should not have targeted to begin with. So I think there's many more that we're not seeing at this point, and we're just catching just a surface skim of the ones that are performing foolish operation and communication security acts online.
So I guess in keeping with that, while the message is very central and very centralized and very core, easily disseminated, are you seeing it that there's kind of a centralized command structure associated with the recruitment, or are there a lot of splinter
Well, I think
agencies operating in
there's
tandem?
there are a lot of splinter groups because it is a global. This, I guess what I'd like to think, and I can't prove this yet, that there is, you know, and it starts to go out into different groups, and the communication goes that way. If you've ever heard of there's something called the Dunbar's number. Have you ever heard of the Dunbar's number? Um, what that is it kind of, if we still go back to Lulsec, Lulsec had a core group of just a handful, and only that group knew who they were, right? And they would actually manipulate and execute all kinds of activities. Lulsec had coordinated the 50 days of FBI Friday, but no one knew these 8 or 9 people that were involved in it. And the human mind, based on the Dunbar's number, says that you can really only have maybe around 125 different friends. It's all the mind can handle. Why, when you see someone with over that on Facebook, that you've got 500, 1,000 friends, I doubt it. I doubt they're even acquaintances. I would imagine that they're 20, 25% of them are probably sock puppets anyway. But the Dunbar numbers says keep your trusted people close, and as you continue to move out from that inner core, you transmit information that you want to be communicated, but not the actual core plans. And as that group continues to expand out, less and less data is fed out, but the central message is communicated. So the trust factor between the different layers coming out from the core group, I think, is maintained through anonymity, but the message is communicated out. That's my theory on this. It goes that way. It's hard to prove that unless you are deeply penetrated. And again, as I say, the marketplace is highly polluted now. Everybody is trying to get information. You don't know who is out there. Definitely strange bedfellows. You may have a conversation with someone that is actually law enforcement, or just someone out for a cyber joyride, right? So there's certain trigger questions I will ask along the way if I suspect, and if I determine based on some credibility and reliability factors that I measure against, or certain denial and deception methods, I will steer away from that person or those people very quickly, and start to back off. One of the things that we teach is linkages, and linkages have fibrillation. They move, they adjust, they mature, they decay, and you can manipulate those links as much as possible. And we tend to do that when we find what we believe to be a poor connection that we want to dissolve.
So, okay, so basically, people are going through a scoring process. They're going ahead and they are constantly elevating their level of engagement, the level of radicalism, for lack of a better term. So finally, they've identified, and it sounds like based on the last question, they've identified a niche for them, and not everybody might be aware of the niche. So, for example, the last woman who was captured in New York, who was planning to basically abandon her family and blow something up and was upset she couldn't. A lot of people in ISIS, despite the fact what's made ISIS great is the coordination, a lot of their acts of terrorism might not necessarily be coordinated. They're not exactly aware of how many recruits have been recruited by different people coming into Syria. They're not exactly aware of how many people are going to do individual actions and stuff like that. Is that what you're saying?
I do believe that to be true. I don't think it's that well held and driven. It's too many things going on the ground in Iraq and Syria to pay attention to that. They have very smart young people who are taking over the internet side of the house, but to actually track it to that level and to track it to that function level, I don't think they have the maturity for that at this point to do something along those lines. I think it takes a long time to actually execute an intelligence model like that, and I just don't think they have that. I think it's more of a kind of a run and gun type of model. And when they find them, this may take several weeks or months to build this trust, to get them to the point where they trust them enough to move them ahead, or allow them to come into the country, or give them passage into the country through possibly Turkey on the Syrian border, or whichever way they're coming through. It's they have to meet some of these hurdles and these gates to actually get to that point. It's not something they just allow them to run and come in.
Are there any operational security concerns to see if anybody is potentially a plant that you know of? Like, was that written in the documents that you've gone through?
They talk about spies in the document and to stay away from them. In other areas, in other documents, they have documents on how to identify online spies or jasus, as they call them. So they do identify that, and they do have methods. It's not in the recruitment documents and some other documents that they have on how to recognize this, where to stay away from, the types of things you should and shouldn't do online, even how to go about building your own online media organization, jihadist media organization that's been out there for years, and they've adopted that. So those are different documents. This one is specifically around recruitment, but they also warn about spies and infiltration, but uh, they don't reference that intensely in this particular document.
So anyway, because we're kind of towards the amount of time we have, we're going to get kicked out of this room despite their bad internet connection. Might think that's a blessing. So I guess, is there anything else that you think, for example, that parents should want to look for? I mean, besides of, if this kids want to go there, let them go type of thing.
Well, that's sometimes maybe depending on your child, you want to let them go. Not just joking, but um,
Yeah.
I think what you just need to look at, all teenagers growing up are searching for something. We all did, right? We all tried to find ourselves along the way. And if you're in an area where you know that you possibly have a propensity towards going that way, maybe some violence, or the child's grades are suffering, or they're starting to show different attitudes more than normal at the dinner table, or maybe they're starting to find new friends that you haven't seen before, and spending an inordinate amount of time online with certain sites, or picking up literature, or starting to go to the mosque more than normal, or different groups after the normal prayer times, or sometimes it's just not there's no one thing, just like we all go through with children, that's going to uh, be a key factor, but trying to identify certain factors out there, such as the ones I mentioned, because the recruiters are going to try and actually do the things that I just discussed at a high level, and that means the recruiters many times are new people in their lives, spending more time with them, coming over the house, asking them to dinner. And if parents can recognize those activities, recognize that they're spending more time getting involved in Islam, and possibly even voicing some more extremist type of attitudes, I think those are triggers you need to look for and look at. There's changes that sometimes we don't notice as parents in our child's behavior, but if you watch closely enough and pay attention to their online behaviors, and then I think you can find this. Online behaviors brings up to you actually spy on your children in there. And so my children growing up were allowed to have PCs in their rooms under the condition that software, which I went through a security education program with them on, was installed in their machines, where I would actually be capturing all their keystrokes and would not allow them to go to certain sites. And I let them know that it was there and what I could do with it and what I would see, and how their parents would actually get notification of these activities. Invariably, within 60 days, one of my children violated that, but I knew about it. So as time went on, I loosened up the reins and tried to teach them and monitor them. So I used some technical capabilities along with just normal parenting skills. I think you have to, and that's a can be a slippery slope as the kids get up into more teenage years, when you have to back off a little bit. But being in security, if I sense something, I've got to act on it. And I think a lot of parents don't have the skills that we do along those lines. And there's probably a need there for some awareness and training at the parent level.
Okay, well, all I have to say is thanks. We really appreciate this, especially on the inaugural edition of the IRARI report, or maybe Security ADD as we see fit.
No problem.
But and in the meantime, is there any shameless promotion you want to do? Because we're really good at that, so
Sure,
you have the
sure.
opportunity to do that too.
Oh, the cyber intel classes are filling up. They're starting to get. We've been hitting these through FSISAC. A lot of competitors have been trying to attend these classes, which we don't allow. Sorry, it just doesn't make sense to do that. Uh, we're actually traveling to different places around the world, getting more and more contacts. And what we're finding too is when we teach these classes, people are really looking for analysis and analytic methods. Anybody can collect. It's what you do to organize it, structure that data, and prep it, decompose it, analyze it, and then put it back together and synthesize it into something that actually is meaningful, that makes sense. And the other thing that I warn people about is with RSA coming up soon, there will be a plethora of people coming out there saying that they offer them out of the box intelligence, and that's just not possible. So if they start to say that, question them deeply, because probably the people saying it don't even have a clue of what intelligence is. It's really probably data, or at best information. Now, I would say just beware. Enjoy yourself at RSA. I won't be there this year. I'll be out of the country.
I'm very sorry to hear that we won't be seeing you at RSA, but I really want to thank you very, very much for spending the time with us today. This has been a fantastic discussion I've had with you, and I'm definitely better off for it, so hope our viewers are as well.
Yeah, and again, for shameless promotion, at Treadstone71 on Twitter and also on the internet website. I believe it's treadstone71.com.
So once again, we'd like to thank Jeff Barden and Treadstone71 for the time and attention today. Really enjoyed speaking with him. Speaking of speaking, Ira and I are speaking at RSA this month in the Industry Experts track. So if you happen to be at the conference, please do stop by and say hi to us. We will also be speaking in several ISSA events later this year, so that will be coming soon to theaters near you, and we certainly invite your attendance there.
Yeah, so one of them is the ISSA LA event in June, so check that out. There's going to be more than 1,000 people there, or at least they tell me, and if there's not, blame Richard Greenberg for that. It's all his fault.
It's always his fault.
Yeah, it's always his fault. So anyway, with all that in mind, please, got to make sure we acknowledge our sponsors. Again, CSO Online, our partnership with CSO Magazine is invaluable. Norse Corporation, again, they have some kick-ass intelligence, and it's real
intelligence, not that fake intelligence.
Yeah, it's not data feeds. It's actual intelligence from the dark webs, dark nets, deep webs, whatever they're calling those things these days. And anyway, make sure also Secure Mentum with some really great security awareness programs. I can vouch for it personally because it's my company. So that's what that is. Additionally, want to make sure you subscribe to the IRARI Report on Twitter. It's actually at IRARIReport.com. Well, at IRARI Report, and you'll see that probably on the chyrons we put underneath. Also, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, because we have some incredible speakers that we're finalizing right now. And if you think Jeff Barden was good, well, no, Jeff Barden was great. If you think he's great, we have some other people who might rival him coming up too. So again, thanks for your time. We appreciate it if you've got this far, and have a lovely day.
Thanks for joining us.